painting to photography, from beadwork to woodworking, KQAL-FM on the campus of Winona State University presents Art Beat. Art Beat highlights the work and accomplishments of local artists from in and around Winona. Support for Art Beat is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Today on Art Beat, we talk to Winona-based artist Jamie Harper, who also goes by the name Salvaged Medium. Jamie not only uses reclaimed materials to paint on, but he also uses salvaged paint. His work often incorporates the wildlife and the landscape of the Mississippi River Valley, combined with splashes of color that give his work an unmistakable look. I sat down with Jamie at Ed's No Name Bar, where his work is being shown through the end of December 2019. We discussed his work, how he came to use reclaimed materials, and making America bike again. I'm Bill Stoneberg with local artist Jamie Harper on Art Beat. So, Jamie, thanks for being on the show tonight.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and you've got an unmistakable style. Anyone who's ever been to Boats and Bluegrass, has seen and can recognize your work. I was just kind of curious because I've seen your stuff hanging up at boats a lot, and how did you start working with like salvage materials and stuff like that? How did that start, and how did you get into it?
Well, I work at a school in town here called Riverway Learning Community, and we do a lot of project-based learning, and I was working on a project, and the idea. Somewhat out of a necessity of cheap materials and latex house paint. I knew there were some places in town I can get it for free, and at that point I was using cardboard, and which was also free, and so it was in the budget and plentiful, and so that's kind of how it started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So and then I noticed on your I think it's your Facebook page or something, it said what are they called? The doors. You use doors for the paintings as well. How did you come about with using that?
Well, when I was finished with the project I was working on at the time with the students using cardboard, I kind of enjoyed doing it. I painted some examples, and at that point I had never really painted. This was probably 12 years ago, 13 years ago, something like that, and I had never really painted, but through the process of preparing the project for them, I kind of enjoyed it, and so the first thing I painted on, I think, was I knew of the Habitat for Humanity Restore in town, and I was like, I should just go buy something from the Restore and just paint on it, and so I ended up buying a door, and that's kind of where it turned from a school project to an interest in painting. And it started out with kind of smaller, like cabinet doors, like a foot by 2 foot, or right. Even smaller, but about that size. And at the time, I was painting in my dining room in a downtown apartment, mm-hmm. which wasn't super conducive and wasn't really that easy. But I didn't really know that at the time. And then I ended up moving from that place and had access to a garage that I turned into a studio, and everything kind of scaled up as far as size, and then kind of moved towards hollow core doors, okay. which is somewhat glamorized cardboard in a way. I mean, they're not that, I'd find them in the dumpster quite a bit, or you can buy them for, a few dollars a piece, and I could either do one big one with a full-size door, I can cut them up and get smaller ones, and so that's kind of how I kind of graduated to the doors. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. So you didn't even paint before you started that project at the school?
No. Painting was art in general. The visual arts wasn't really something I was into that much. I was into photography. I like to take photographs, and I was into music, but as far as visual arts, not so much. And once I did that project, it kind of sparked something, and it just kind of grew from there. Yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. So, did you have any art experience? Because your stuff is great. I really like it. did you have any art experience before that? Any visual art experience?
No, I mean, I would say the photography, and even with the photography, I wasn't necessarily trained or I didn't take classes, but I enjoyed taking photographs. And, a lot of times people would see photographs that I had taken, which this was before digital, really, people would see some of the photographs and, people had said I had like a good eye for photography, which I didn't really know what I was doing. It was just something that, I don't know, just the balance of things, I guess. I don't know. And it definitely transfers over well for painting as far as, composition and building composition. And even when I first started painting, I didn't have any, I never thought about composition. It was just kind of I just did it. And I'd look at some of those older ones and there were still, I look back and it's like, oh, weird, that does have some balance. It was just kind of a weird thing. I don't know.
So just kind of natural, really.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely not trained, and actually more recently I've been, our school has kind of formalized art a little more, and, we have an art teacher that, does art with students, and I end up sitting in those classes, and I'm getting more out of that than I ever had gotten any sort of formal training.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of exciting to take those classes with these junior high kids. It's like junior high and high school students. I feel like I'm immersed in it and really learning something. And it's kind of made me think like, what would happen if I went back and studied after, I've been painting now for about 10 years. So I definitely am interested in learning more about it for sure. Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably key in a lot of endeavors people take on, if you have that interest and passion to learn more, you're just going to, it seems like, I'm looking around and I'm thinking, oh, how the heck did this guy just start doing this without any experience before, so it blows my mind, man.
Yeah, it's, at least from where I'm at, where I'm at now with it, it's definitely been trial and error and repetition, because, I don't have a count on how many paintings I've done since I've started, but I would be willing to guess it's over 500.
Oh yeah.
A fair amount. I think I have 80 paintings in this exhibit.
Oh wow.
So it's definitely a trial and error and repetition, practice. At least to where I'm at now, and I do paint fast, so it's a pretty fast process, which helps to enable it to paint that quantity.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. So when you're painting, do you like, especially since you had an interest in photography, do you like work off of photographs, or does it all just come from your mind, or how does that work? Or like, do you do plein air? How does it work?
Yeah, it's I'd say it's both. Yeah, I'll use photographs to get ideas for things. Otherwise, I'll just do things, and then after again, the repetition, I might not need to look at the images as much anymore. It's more, yeah.
Cool. And you have a lot of stuff that's like wildlife, and a lot of stuff that involves water and things like that. Have you always felt like a connection to like water and wildlife, or is that something that just kind of evolved, or?
Yeah, it came, I'd say it came a little later. Moving to Winona, definitely, and leading up to moving to Winona, that was part of the reason I chose this area. I'm from outside of west of Chicago, about 50 miles, and as I was kind of finishing high school and trying to figure out what I was going to do next, I just had a feeling of kind of wanting to get out of that area. I really liked it. I liked the people, family, friends. It was hard to leave. But I was definitely drawn to water and rivers in particular, really. Cool. And then once I moved here, I could tell the people, it was different, like the way people thought about the environment, the way people thought about their food, the way people thought about a lot of things was very different. It was very noticeable. And I got a job fairly recently, or fairly close to after I had moved here at the Bluff Country Co-op. And that solidified. I mean, I sensed it when I moved here, and then when I got involved with the co-op, it really changed my perspective on a lot of things real fast. To see people care about food was like, it was not really in my consciousness, I guess. And so that was a big part of it. And I was studying sociology and history at Winona State, and I kind of got into social and environmental activism through that course of studies. I was taking an international relations class the September 11th, and it was very powerful. And I was working at the co-op when it actually happened, so it was, looking back at it, there's these very powerful things that changed the course of my direction, right, for sure. And then with the school and working at the school, that changed a lot too, because the school has an environmental perspective, and that's kind of how I got linked up with the school originally. And so the environment is really important to me, and I feel like the materials itself is part of that, for sure. I mean, it's a very conscious decision to use reclaimed materials, and then to choose subject matter that's also nature based and local. It's a lot of local species, local landscapes. River Valley is intentional. And I've done some shows up north, Duluth area, and so I got into painting that area and region as well. But yeah, it definitely is very environmental focused and intentional in that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of, I find it kind of fascinating that, the reclaimed materials kind of started out of necessity, but yet it just fits, it seems like, with your vision and your constitution of what you believe, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's nice to, as far as like with the students, it's a good example for them of like things that can be done with reclaimed materials, because like we're studying climate change at the school under the idea that it's real and it's caused by humans, and we're a part of it. And and for me, like being an adult, that to be an example for them, like yeah, there's a lot of things wrong and a lot of people are doing bad things and people need to make changes, and I I'm not perfect in any regard, to resource use and materials, and but I try my best and try to do what I can, and and I guess the art is one way to do it, one way to show it, and so yeah, it's really important to me in that regards, for sure. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's great. I mean, I think it's, God, I don't know how to put it, but to have someone like you in our community who's doing this artwork and then working with kids with that attitude, I mean, that's just a beautiful thing, man. That's great.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you. It's I feel fortunate to be able to do it. To be able to, to be able to be engaged with young people. And I mean, I really feel like we're living through some pretty crazy times, and pretty important decisions need to be made to guide us into certain directions, and so, I mean, if I can learn from them and they can learn from me, I think that's a very fortunate thing. Yeah, I think it's a very fortunate thing.
Yes, I would agree for sure. And then I want to get back to, I mentioned that your work is often at Boats and Bluegrass too. How'd you get hooked up with that gig? Because that's really cool. I mean, and I always look forward to seeing what you got up there too every year. So.
Yeah, well, it started out, it kind of just, when I started painting, it kind of came on fast, as far as, I started painting, and and like kind of, I don't know, just displaying it at some pretty locally with friends and like pretty small situations. But the folks who founded Boats and Bluegrass and ran it were really good friends of mine, and and they had asked if I'd want to set up a batch of paintings. This was probably like maybe the third year of Boats and Bluegrass, and so it was a pretty small little setup, and it kind of grew from there. And each year they always seemed really happy with it, and I always enjoyed doing it, and it's a great place to get my artwork seen by a lot of people outside of Winona, people from Winona, but also a lot of people come to the event from all over the Midwest. So it was nice in that regards, and so I just kind of kept working with them, and they kept inviting me back, and it was kind of I think it was a reciprocally good situation, and so it's been fantastic. We're really fortunate to live in Winona that to have that caliber of an event, and so for me to be able to be a part of it and show my art is I feel really fortunate to be able to do that, for sure. Yeah.
Right. And it seems like such a perfect fit, too, because it's right on the river. I think a lot of us that go to that festival share a lot of similar attitudes and stuff. So, and you have the wildlife and the fish, and it just seems like a great fit. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very like-minded people.
Right.
Yeah, it works out. It works out really well. Yeah.
And then I noticed that you have a series here. There it is. Make America Bike Again. So how did that kind of come about? What inspired that?
Obviously, Make America Anything, comes from a certain source. And, I mean, just to be blunt, he makes me fairly nauseous. And I feel like there's a lot of hypocrisies. And I feel like... like going back to the idea of the climate change, and people need to make different choices and decisions. Our society needs to make different choices. Whether it's food, whether it's transportation, it's energy, how we all of these things. And so it was partially I needed to paint paintings for that particular wall, and so is part of the process. A lot of times when I paint something, if I'm able to paint for a particular spot where it's going to go, I do that quite a bit, and so that wall in particular, I was kind of excited to use that wall because it had always had artwork that stayed up at Ed's, and so I had never put art on it, and so those paintings came down, and so I was kind of excited to do something there, and at the time we were working with students with about climate change, and so that was kind of the idea that I came up with, and so it's just a series. I think there's 17 different paintings that are all bikes, and they're red, white, and blue. And part of it, it's for me. I know I should bike more. I know, like I said, I'm not perfect. I need to not use grocery bags. I need to, I've definitely made changes in my life that I feel like, for the better. I don't eat fast food. I don't buy coffee without my cup that I use over and over. I mean, there's all kinds of things, but it's I feel like those paintings is also for me to try to be better as well. I don't want to tell people what to do, but it's definitely I have strong feelings about that stuff.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, and and you put ideas out there, and hopefully things spread. Right?
Yeah. I mean, after the global climate march that Greta Thunberg led, young people led, the walkout. I think it was mid-September. We had students engaged in that, and we were it was a teaching moment for sure to learn about it. And we did a lesson on how to paint signs, like how to paint protest signs.
Wow, cool.
And it was a really fun thing, and it really got me thinking. And I was gonna do a wall of protest signs, and and which I would still like to do that. I think that would be a fun. Project to take on, to just do a series of signs. I have a bunch that I've just painted, as they came up and events came up that I would go to and just paint a sign. But to consciously do a bunch of them, I think would be a fun thing. Yeah.
Cool. That would be cool. I'm looking forward to that at the next exhibit. All right. So this is kind of a personal question I just wanted to ask you, I've seen in several of your works you depict northern pike. Among you have other fish too, but there's several that I've seen that are northern pike. Yeah. And I hope to someday own one of them and hang it on my wall. But what is it about northern pike that kind of inspires you? I mean, how does that come about?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like part of the reason I wanted to move up here in this area, not only the Mississippi River, but I had a good friend growing up since I was in kindergarten, that his family had land in northern Wisconsin, and I wasn't a big fisherman as a kid, really, but I would go up with him and his family, and we would go fish on this lake, and it was the first time I'd ever caught up northern. It was crazy, it was like, holy smokes, like this is different, and really growing through school, I would go up with him and his family, but then it graduated into like, us group of friends in high school would go up for like, the week, we would make a vacation out of it and fish. And so that was kind of my first connection. And then recently I'd gotten a boat, and it kind of re-sparked some of the fishing that, and so, I'd take the boat out in the backwaters, and we were catching we would just catch these monster northerns, and it was just wild. And so I definitely have a connection to that fish in particular. And they're fun. I like painting fish. Like I said, like setting up a wall, they're nice because they're long and skinny. They can fill an area. They change the dynamic of the wall a little bit. You put them below a painting with water. It's kind of like the fish is under the water, So I like to paint fish. I like to paint series of fish, and other people like them as well. People who like fish like them, and so they sell. People enjoy them. So it's again reciprocally nice.
Is there a place online that people can go and view your work and maybe find out a little bit more about you and where you might have exhibits?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, my main internet presence is a Facebook art page under Salvaged Medium.
Sounds good. So just want to let everyone know we're down at Ed's No Name Bar. Jamie Harper here has an exhibit going on, and it runs through the end of December. So get down here and check it out. A lot of really cool stuff. And thanks so much for being with us today, Jamie. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for your interest in my work. I appreciate it.
Thanks again to Jamie Harper for joining us today on Artbeat. To see some of Jamie's work, look for Salvaged Medium on Facebook. For more conversations on art, tune into Artbeat Tuesdays at 12:30 right here on 89.5 KQAL. I'm Bill Stoneberg, and we've just heard from artist Jamie Harper on Artbeat.
Artbeat is written and produced by KQAL-FM on the campus of Winona State University. Visit us on the web at kqal.org.
Is art an important part of your life? Find podcasts of Artbeat and all your favorite KQAL shows at kqal.org. Artbeat is made possible by a grant from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.